So Tom Cotton says China's rooting for Joe Biden. Anytime that anybody says Russia's rooting for Donald Trump, they're like, Russia gate, oh my God, how could you say that? And we actually have evidence that Russia actually physically helped Donald Trump in 2016 and is helping him now. But if you say Russia gate, it's a hoax, right? And they say it about China helping Biden with no evidence. Just who cares? Throw it out there. There are two different rules for two different parties. And he says, if you notice the little racist reference to Donald Trump's not gonna take a knee, that means Donald Trump doesn't give a damn about black people, and neither do I, and neither should you. So if you're a racist like me, Tom Cotton, vote for Donald Trump. So that's very clear. And then he, Edwin, our stage manager, reminded me, even though we have no stage here, he texted me that this guy's Tehran Tom. So he's the one that wrote to the Iranian leaders when Obama was making the deal, saying, "Don't listen to the U.S. president. Let's do, we're gonna betray the president behind his back. So I'm telling you, Iranian leaders, whatever you do, don't listen to the United States of America." So that's who this son of a bitch is. But his speech paled in comparison to Pat Lynch and Rudy Giuliani in terms of hateful. Rudy Giuliani said that Biden was, quote, obviously defective. These guys have broken the hypocrisy meter. It's totally shattered. If there's one person I can name that's more obviously defective than Donald Trump, it's Rudy Giuliani. So they send the most obviously mentally damaged person they have to say that there's something wrong with Joe Biden's mental capacity. Because that's what torturers do. They try to break you by getting you to agree to things that are obviously not true, right? If you wanted to send in like the model of mental acumen, I don't know who the hell that would be in the Republican Party to question Joe Biden, that's one thing. But when you send cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs to say that, hey, silly tricks are for kids, that's not a compelling case that the Democratic Party is the one with obviously defective mental issues. And then he said at this point, because there's no accountability for the Republicans. If a Democrat had said anything along these lines, they'd be ripped to shreds. He said at one point, the Democrats want to make sure that they get the rioters out of jails quickly enough so they can go back to rioting. Do I have to disprove that one for you? I mean, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. They just lie with no remorse. They lie with abandon. And those aren't nearly as bad as Pat Lynch's speech. But Emma, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we can summarize this night tonight as bootlickers incorporated, basically. Everyone is just submitting to authority, whether that authority be Donald Trump, somebody who they get to praise effusively and who's they're on their his gravy train, whatever, as we saw with Scavino, and just cop bootlickers, people who want to submit to authority, not question authority. And we saw this with the police union guy who, if you recall, he went pretty nuts and ranted in a viral video after George Floyd's death and the protests that were subsequently after that. But he was the guy who defended when the NYPD basically doxed Bill de Blasio's daughter. So all de Blasio asked cops to do was put on body cams. He mandated body cams, and they ended stop and frisk. And look at how they cry. He didn't even go that hard. Look at how they still turn on him and go and say that he's creating lawlessness. I mean, the Republicans went after AOC because she said, wow, there's a lot of poverty right now. We have tens of millions of people unemployed. That might be leading to crime in New York. That's like the most common sense thing I've ever heard in my life. And they went crazy about it because they want to connect basically Bill de Blasio and Democrats to this lawlessness, and it's inconvenient for their narrative. So, I mean, Rudy Giuliani's unhinged. I could feel him spitting on me through the camera, just that old man spittle. It's disgusting. He's a gremlin. I have zero respect for Rudy Giuliani. He's a pretty terrible person. But yeah, I mean, all of this stuff about policing and authority, it makes me sick.
So look, I like de Blasio, but I gotta be honest, I don't think he was nearly tough enough on those NYPD. So look, he stopped stop and frisk, which targeted minorities at a rate of 90%, over 90%. So according to the New York cops, the 9 out of 10 guilty people are black or Latino. It's absurd. It's absurd. And then he's like, oh, now he said in the speech, Pat Lynch did. He's the head of the NYPD's union. Okay, he's like, oh, they have our hands tied behind our back. That's code for what? Now we can't beat the crap out of innocent people? Oh my God, how are we gonna do policing if we can't beat the crap out of people? Now I'm sure that he would say that some of those people that he abuses are also guilty. Some are innocent, but he's like, who cares, right? And so all we did was ask you to stop a deeply, deeply racist policy, and he's still crying about it. And he says no one is going to be safe. No one is going to be safe, if we do what? If we do what? If we don't allow you to shoot unarmed black men in the back. So apparently that's the only way you can police. Oh my God, so now we can't choke out black guys. We can't. And by the way, if you're saying, hey, wait, George Floyd's not in New York and Jacob Blake's not in, wait a minute, Eric Garner's in New York and NYPD choked him to death based on nothing. And they're still crying about any attempt to hold him accountable for killing, murdering Eric Garner. They're like, how are we supposed to do our job? How are we supposed to choke them to death? And we got our hands tied behind our back.
And Cenk, by the way, chokeholds were banned in New York when that happened. Another reason why the Republicans, like Rudy Giuliani in his speech, were trying to turn around and say the Democrats don't want to agree to police reform, like Trump's chokehold ban, which is really just an incentive not to do chokeholds. Because they're giving them piecemeal because they want Trump to fail. Basically, that was his entire argument, which is outrageous because we know that if there's a ban or if there's mandates without enforcement and you don't get rid of qualified immunity, cops will still do whatever they want because there's no repercussions. It's just wind.
Yeah, I think Pat Lynch's speech, it's hard to beat this record at the RNC, but it was one of the worst speeches. It was deeply racist, filled with nonstop lies. So he said, they want us to surrender the streets. Hey, you're supposed to serve the entire community. You're supposed to protect and serve. It says it on your badge, it says it on your cars. No, he's thinking he's an occupying force. And that if we're not allowing him to abuse the citizens, then we've surrendered the streets. Get to the community, to the people. No, the cops should rule the streets on behalf of rich white people and kick ass for them and crush minorities. Don't tie our hands behind our back. You racist. All right, I want to say worse. All right, now on those lies. He says, the Democrats want to dismantle our entire criminal justice system and have no policing and no justice system. Okay, now if you want to say some folks want to defund the police and have a rational system of policing that addresses both violent crime and non-violent situations, like dealing with homeless people, and you want to critique that, okay. If you want to say the Democrats don't want to have a criminal justice system, that's bananas, that's insane. In one of the core tenets of Democrats and progressives is justice. It's justice. But in Pat Lynch's head, if white people aren't in charge and their thugs can't abuse everyone else and keep them in their place, well, is that really a justice system? In Pat Lynch's justice system, he's at the top and Trump's at the top and they have their boot on your neck. That's not justice at all. You sicken me. And then he talked about all these things. This was Republican 101. This guy got killed, that guy got killed. Yeah, really, Pat? How many of those cases did you guys solve? Because you only saw 1/3 of rapes, for example, across the country, all cops. 2/3 of rapes. Most rapes don't even get reported because people are worried the cops aren't gonna bother to solve it. Unfortunately, they're right. They only solve 1/3 of the rape cases. How many of the murder cases? Murder is the most important thing, only 2/3. How many of the police shooting cases do they solve? If a police is shot, a police officer, they solve 100% of those cases. Oh, so it turns out you can solve cases. You just don't give a damn when it's actually the citizens. So don't tell me sob stories about people that got killed on your watch, by the way, Pat Lynch, on your watch, and cases you didn't even bother solving. So you need me, except for the fact that I'm not really gonna do my job, and all I wanna do is beat the living crap out of the citizens. That's what Pat Lynch's speech was. It was disgusting.
And can I just make a point about Tom Cotton? So Tom Cotton clearly wants to run for president in 2024. He's an old school neocon on top of being a fascist. And I don't understand this mixed messaging from the Republicans. So Cotton talks about how America's safer. He was saying how because under Trump, America's safer now than it was under Obama. But literally the entire convention has been about how things are terrible, and this is a preview of what it would be like under Joe Biden. But this is what it's like under Trump now. Riots, looting, whatever, because he literally won't address the problem. So people are taking to the streets, and then naturally there is sometimes people who commit crimes and out of rage, out of feeling unheard because the president isn't hearing them. So pick a lane. I mean, it's the same thing with Joe Biden and the crime bill. So 13% of black men in 2016 voted for Donald Trump, or 13% of black male voters, I should say. They're trying to shave off a little bit more of that percentage and increase his percentage there. So they're hammering that point home about how Joe Biden, he wrote the crime bill and incarcerated all these people. And at the same time, they're talking about how they want to be tough on crime and implement all these racist policies. And then how Biden also basically wants to get rid of the criminal justice system. That's their other argument. So which one is it? Did he write the crime bill, which is true? Does he want to get rid of the criminal justice system? And now Tom Cotton, America is safer now than it was under Obama. But literally the whole convention has been about how the streets are so dangerous and crime is up, when crime, by the way, in New York City has been on a decline. It's been ticking up this year because everyone's in their homes and out of work, and there's a mental health crisis and an economic crisis, but there's no cohesion to the logic here. It's really not even though about that. It's about making people feel a certain way. And they're speaking to their audience, but I don't think the message is cohesive enough on law and order to break through.
Emma, you make a great point. So let me ask you guys this question, whether you're Democrat, Republican, or Independent. If you're watching this RNC, first of all, I hope you're watching with us, otherwise it's unbearable. But if you're watching it, do you get the sense that the Republicans care more about cracking skulls so that they could prevent rioting, and by the way, also protests, or they care more about the underlying issue of police reform that caused the protests and then the rioting in the first place, right? So yeah, no question, some buildings have been burned down in Kenosha. By the way, that's property damage. In terms of killing people, that was the right wing who did it. And by the way, the media sucks. They just keep saying like, oh, burning, killing, it's the protesters. No. Right wing walked into the middle of protests with guns, shot people. It was a right wing that killed people. It was the cops who tried to kill Jacob Blake. So the actual violence against human beings done by the right wing and the cops, the media need to do a better job of clarifying that. But in terms of this convention, who thinks that the Republicans came out and said, oh, well, look, the underlying problem can be fixed with police reform, and here's our proposals for that? None, zero. They're like, how are we gonna protect the cops? They can't crack skulls enough anymore. And now, what are they rioting over? Because we cracked their skulls? Good, let's give them more skull cracking. There's no dispute over that. And if you're voting Republican and you're watching it, you know that, that's why you're voting for them. It's not like you're voting for them because, hey, you know what? It looks like there's too many unarmed black men being shot and abused, and every African American in the country says the same exact thing, and maybe we should look to fix it. I don't know a single Republican who ever says that. So just drop the pretenses. We know who you are. All right, I got to give a shout out to our Twitch fans who are awesome. We're also on Twitch now. Null Unit 40 just donated 11,000 bits, and with a quote, Mitch better have my money. Okay, by the way, that's a shirt that dropped today at shoptyt.com. There's 20% off at shoptyt.com, including this shirt, person, woman, man, camera, TV. Hashtag cognitively there. Okay, so thank you though, Null Unit 40, you're awesome. All of our Twitch folks are awesome. Obi Mom Kenobi just gifted her 463rd sub to the channel. Holy cow. Lieutenant Mac McG gifted 15 subs. That's his 133rd so far. Ozil84 donated 300 bits. Cobalt Chaos subbed with Prime. And if you have Amazon Prime and you're on Twitch, it's free for you to sub to us, but we get paid on it. It makes all the difference. Vengeful 1977 resub for their second month. And Erica MH22 gifted 10 subs, 75th overall. We love you guys.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.